Lorenzo descended deeper into the labyrinthine stacks, his lamp's feeble light piercing the gloom as he sought solace in the sanctuary of dusty tomes, their ancient leather spines offering a deceptive comfort. Amid the babel of centuries past chronicled in fading ink, Lorenzo pored over chronicles of saints and martyrs whose unshakable faith contrasted with his own crumbling certainty. In the dim oil lamplight, the stacks seemed to writhe with long, distorted shadows, as if animated by unseen presences. Lorenzo paused, heart thudding, convinced he sensed a disturbance in the hallowed quiet. The rustle of pages he had not turned, the murmur of voices in the dead language of the damned. But as always, reason dispelled his mounting dread. The Vatican archives, repository of divine revelation and human frailty, held secrets best left undisturbed. Yet tonight, curiosity gnawed at Lorenzo's resolve, whispering insidious doubts that wormed into his waking thoughts. He retrieved a file marked the weeping icon of Vladimir. 1953, the story of a Russian woman whose tears flowed in supplication for her people's salvation during wartime. Blurring the line between devotion and derangement, Lorenzo felt the pull of controversy, sensing the tremors of faith and fanaticism. Another file beckoned, the Transverberation of Saint Teresa, 1624, detailing the mystic's visionary experience of Christ's spear, piercing her heart in an ecstasy of love and pain. Lorenzo traced the exquisite torture of Teresa's vision, her pen a scalpel dissecting the sacred wound in rapturous prose. Each turn of the parchment peeled back another layer of devotion, doubt, and damnable mysteries. Lorenzo's lamp sputtered, casting grotesque shapes that danced like demons on the vaulting, their laughter echoing in his skull. Was the Vatican's hallowed archive truly a storehouse of light, or did darkness linger in its deepest recesses? He shivered, realizing the chill stemmed not from the drafts whistling through broken window panes, but from the encroaching specter of forbidden knowledge. As dawn crept closer, Lorenzo sought the solace of the chapel within the archive, its high altar shrouded in mourning shadows. Kneeling before the crucifix, he prayed for guidance, his whispered pleas swallowed by the cavernous space. The familiar words of the Our Father catching in his throat as doubt poisoned his devotions. "Thy will be done," he choked out, the blasphemy a half-formed thought banished from his lips. Emerging from the chapel, Lorenzo faced the daunting task of restoring order to the jumble of files scattered in his wake. With each movement, his conviction waned, the sanctity of his vows replaced by the creeping dread of forbidden truths disturbing the placidity of his existence. Cardinal Rossi, his weathered face etched with the weariness of ages, presided over a conclave of prelates in the Vatican's echoing synod hall, their hushed voices weaving a tapestry of unease as they wove through arguments for and against opening the archive's most perilous files. Rossi's gaze, keen despite his years, scanned the assembly, discerning the flicker of doubt and dawning horror in their eyes. Memories of a wartime world stripped bare by fanaticism spurred him on, a world where even holy ground trembled before the fires of human folly. Rossi knew the delicate balance teetered. Unprecedented winds of change threatened to sweep through the halls of tradition, risking exposure of the Church's long-buried wounds. The spectre of scandal loomed, threatening to sully the pristine image of faith. He pressed on, driven by a desperate hope of assuaging the restless souls of the faithful and the fear of divine retribution for their concealment. Father Lorenzo Ricci, his youthful face ashen under flickering candlelight, stood before the cardinal's tribunal, his carefully constructed composure cracking under scrutiny. His crime, the illicit reading of restricted files exposing the Church's grapplings with unsettling phenomena. Rossi regarded him gravely, recognizing the stirrings of doubt and burgeoning heresy in the young priest's tormented eyes. Lorenzo's fate hung in the balance, his punishment a choice between silencing his doubts through obedience or banishing him from the priesthood for questioning the divine. The sanctity of the archive's hallowed halls echoed with the weight of Lorenzo's transgression. Would his punishment bring clarity or spell ruin for a soul grappling with the mysteries of faith? As twilight draped the eternal city in shadow, Lorenzo made his way through deserted streets, his footsteps muffled on cobblestone slick with rain, the spectre of damnation dogging his every move. With each echoing step, he braced for divine retribution, knowing that heaven and hell contended for his wavering soul. Reaching his garret room, he shut out the sounds of nocturnal Rome, seeking solace in solitude. Yet the shadows seemed to mock his shrinking certainty, and sleep offered no respite from the horrors he had unearthed. Trapped in the labyrinth of his own making, Lorenzo confronted the haunting spectres of his illicit readings, their ghostly manifestations seeping into his waking hours. Each creak of the building, each whisper of wind through broken window panes, sounded like pronouncements of his damnation. As the hours crawled by, Lorenzo descended further into the abyss of his disordered thoughts, the line between piety and madness blurring with every tortured step. Confined by his own hand to a prison of his design, Lorenzo's fate hung in the balance, his salvation dependent on retracing his steps through the maelstrom of his own unraveling. Would he find redemption amidst the ruins of his shattered faith, or would he succumb to the spectres that haunted him? In the heart of Vatican City, within the oppressive yet opulent chambers of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints, where frescoes of martyred figures gazed down with eyes of eternal sorrow, chandeliers cast golden halos like ironic crowns upon desks cluttered with reports of apparitions and possessions. Heavy with the incense of sanctified lies, the faint rustle of papers whispered like confessions from sealed lips. Father Lorenzo Ricci, a young priest of the Jesuit order, found himself confronting Cardinal Stefan Rossi on a stormy afternoon in June 1952. His clerical robes were damp from Rome's rain that fell like divine tears upon the eternal city as cobblestones. His faith's foundation was cracking like the lightning that fractured the sky. He was a priest whose quest for truth clashed with the obedience demanded by his order, torn between uncovering the Church's concealed failures and the dread of excommunications. Exile conflicted between the solace of dogma and the horror of paranormal proofs that challenged God's benevolence. Across the desk, Cardinal Rossi, his face etched with the burdens of authority, wrestled with the task before him. A man of deep faith, he had dedicated his life to the service of the Lord, yet he carried a secret doubt that gnawed at his soul. He believed in God, but he also knew of the Church's past mistakes. Rossi was destined for a papal funeral in 1985, where his sealed confessions would remain, locked in vaults like sins unabsorbed as thunder rolled like God's displeasure. Lorenzo presented the file on the possession of Robbie Mannheim, 1949, the American boy's case that inspired whispers of The Exorcist. It detailed how two Jesuit priests performed the rites in St. Louis, where the child levitated and spat nails. The image was haunting. Robbie's body arched on a mattress stained with vomit, face contorted in a demonic grimace, with eyes black as abyssal voids, crucifixes scorching his skin while priests in sweat-soaked cassocks chanted Latin amid candle flames that bent unnaturally. The room's walls vibrated like a heart in terror's throes, shadows cast by flickering light, dancing like legions of the damned around the bedposts, twisted like tortured limbs. Rossi's hand trembled on his rosary. Visions assaulted him of his own youthful encounter with a possessed nun in Sicily, whose screams had shaken his vocation. Years of burying such cases had taken their toll, leaving him more afraid of God's wrath than of hell. Yet here was Lorenzo, demanding revelation. His voice quavered like leaves in a gale, but Rossi's decree fell like a gavel of finality, the archive's doors closing on truths that might affirm Satan's realm. In the ensuing months, Lorenzo delved deeper in solitary nights, uncovering the miracle of Lanciano, 8th century, where Eucharistic bread turned to flesh under a doubting priest's hands. It was sealed for fears of scientific scrutiny, revealing fraud. The parchment described the host bleeding like Christ's wounds in a Umbrian chapel. The scene lingered, the priest's face pale in candlelight, fingers sticky with blood that dripped like holy oil on altar cloth congregants. Kneeling in awe amid incense curls that twisted like ascending prayers, shadows on stone walls elongating like witnesses to divine intervention or clerical deception. Lorenzo's doubts deepened, sleep eluding him in his Spartan room, where crucifixes seemed to weep. His tragic unraveling had begun. Hallucinations of files animating like golems of judgment pursued him. Rossi, in private confessions, admitted the archive's burden. His prayers in St. Peter's Basilica, where echoes amplified his whispers, conflicted between faith's comfort and the knowledge of suppressed UFO sightings in Fatima's skies. Reports of alien apparitions, mistaken for angels, sealed since 1917 to avoid heresy. The cardinal's hand shook signing orders. Visions of his own deathbed where secrets demanded release, yet silence prevailed. As the clock chimed midnight, casting long shadows in the archives, Lorenzo's resolve hardened. Despite the risk of damnation, he would continue seeking the truth, convinced that even in darkness, faith could endure if it was not a lie. And so the story of the haunted archives continues, a chilling tale of faith, doubt, and the unsettling truths that sometimes lie dormant within the hallowed halls of religious history. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this story and want to support our channel, please hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating historical tales. Your support helps us continue bringing history to life. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world's hidden stories. Amid the opulent yet oppressive papal apartments in the Vatican, where frescoes of apocalyptic visions gazed down with eyes of divine wrath, under chandeliers that cast golden light like halos upon desks cluttered with declassified reports heavy with the incense of sanctified deceit, Father Lorenzo Ricci confronted the final file in a fevered trance on Christmas Eve 1952. His emaciated form slumped in a chair carved with scenes of exorcisms that seemed to writhe in the lamplight, his crumbling faith a ruin where doubt's vines choked the pillars of belief. A priest whose quest for transparency clashed with the madness induced by horrors unveiled, torn between exposing the Church's concealments and the terror of eternal damnation for heresy, conflicted between the solace of oblivion and the drive to reveal truths that might redeem the afflicted, doomed to a sanitarium-s isolation, where doctors dismissed his ravings as delusions until his 1967 death in obscurity, his body interred without honors like a heretic cast from grace. Cardinal Rossi, witnessing Lorenzo's breakdown in the archive's gloom, sealed the doors with a key that turned like fate's unyielding lock, his authoritative calm fracturing under the guilt of suppressing a subordinate's revelations, fated to carry the burden until his 1985 demise, where confessors absolved but history judged. His tragic essence in ordering the files reburied like sins in confessionals. The file detailed the Vatican UFO investigations, 1950s, reports of aerial phenomena over Rome interpreted as demonic portents or angelic signs, sealed to prevent panic. The parchment described pilots' encounters with luminous orbs that danced like fallen stars, the image haunting eternally. A fighter jet silhouetted against twilight skies, pilots' faces pale in cockpit glow as spheres pulsed with otherworldly light, instruments spinning like possessed dials amid radio static that crackled like voices from beyond. The Vatican's astronomers in observatories where telescopes pierced heavens like inquisitorial eyes, their robes billowing in winds that carried whispers of extraterrestrial threats to faith. Lorenzo's visions intensified. Apparitions of possessed souls manifesting in his quarters where mirrors reflected forms contorted in agony, his screams echoing through Vatican corridors like cries from purgatory, doctors attributing to exhaustion, yet Rossi knowing the archive's toll. In 1974, declassifications, files emerged like skeletons from crypts, historians poring over exorcism rites in dim libraries where dust motes danced like disturbed spirits, artifacts of holy water vials and possessed artifacts fueling debates on faith versus psychiatry. Rossi's successors debated openness, Pope Paul VI in 1978, issuing norms for discernment amid supernatural claims. His pontificate shadowed by wartime secrets that mirrored the paranormal's veil. Lorenzo's legacy whispered in Vatican lore as the archivist driven mad by truths too profound. His grave unmarked like the cases he unveiled. In 2024's conferences dim with projector glow, experts like Diana Paselka argued archives held UFO secrets mistaken for miracles, their voices echoing like calls from the void. The Church's dark files endured, a baroque dirge of faith and fear, characters' depths drowned in secrecy's abyss, emotional storms raging against revelation's elusive dawn.